Hello, I'm Steve Nash, and this is FutureProof, a series where we confront the extraordinary challenges facing the automotive industry. Today, of course, we face change on an unprecedented scale, and without a healthy influx of talent, our industry will simply cease to function. As senior executives, we are, of course, charged with finding answers, but how often do we ask those who may actually know? Well, that's what I plan to do now. Today, I will be talking to Megan Andrews, who is currently undertaking the foundation year of an engineering degree at the University of East Anglia and has a keen interest in entering the world of motorsport. Megan represents the single biggest underrepresented group in our industry, and in addition she is of course part of Generation Z, that important demographic group that all industries are vying to attract without necessarily knowing how to go about it. So Megan, welcome. Where did your interest in motorsport come from?
A few years ago at my old school before I went to uni, they started a F24 program, which is an electric go-kart. But before that, me and my dad always used to go around and look at cars as much as we can. Any car, if you see a nice car go down the road, you go, oh, what's that? And you go have a look at it.
And the program you did at school, this is based around electrically propelled vehicle, isn't it?
Yeah, all completely electrically powered from batteries.
I'm really encouraged when I see programs like that.
Yeah.
How many schools kind of partake in that?
There is quite a few schools. There's quite a few schools in Norfolk alone, and that the biggest race kind of for Norfolk is the Lotus race.
So that's where you go and you race those cars at the Lotus test track?
Yeah, we do. We go to Hethel and we race there, which the next race is in June, so looking forward to that. But they have races all the way up into Scotland. They go down the south. So there's lots of schools all around the country that do it. I can't remember exactly. There's definitely over 100 schools that do it.
Right. It's great to see those programs coming back, though, because a lot disappeared because of the pressures on the national curriculum saying you've got to do more English and maths to improve numeracy and literacy. And a lot of those extracurricular things went. And of course, when you talk about racing, that's about getting to the end of the race, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's not about going flat out.
It's not about going flat out. We have hour-and-a-half races that we have to complete, and you cannot change the batteries during them. So some cars will make it to the end because they've trained and cycled their battery so well that they have the battery to last.
Right.
Whereas some cars, they will go full out right at the beginning of the race, and they'll last maybe half an hour, and then they're going to have to go get picked up because they can't make it around the track.
But they've had a bit of fun.
They've had a bit of fun, yes, definitely.
Yeah. But you were saying that there are two, you told me earlier on, there were two sort of different categories. There's some where you use a standardised kit and then you develop it yourself.
Yeah, so within F24 and F24 Plus, there's the kit car, which they give you the basic kit and then you build it and you can make small adjustments to it. And then there's the scratch cars, which you built completely from scratch. You have to meet still of certain regulations, but quite often they'll be a lot quicker because they've been able to build them from scratch. They can make them very aerodynamic, make them as light as they want and all things like that. So they end up actually splitting the category. And so you have the scratch car winners and you have the kit car winners because there is actually such difference.
I presume that comes down to funding, does it? That comes down to having the right benefactors who put some money behind it.
Some schools actually do scratch cars because it's cheaper to build out certain different materials because the kit alone costs quite a lot of money.
Okay, yeah, understood.
Yeah, so I think it depends on whereabouts your school stands with the competition, and with the funding, where you build the scratch car or you build the kit car. So I think it depends on that.
So, I mean, obviously you're no longer at school, but you're still helping with that programme, aren't you?
Yeah, so I go back every week and I help with all the team now, which is slowly growing in size from what it was when I first started. We've got a lot of new members and they're very, very keen. So much keen that we're running out of budget to do things.
Really?
Yes. Being at an all-girls school gave me that opportunity to do those things without being, I suppose, limited with the idea that, maybe women shouldn't be in motorsport and something like that.
The engineering programme you're on, what's the sort of gender balance like there?
I believe there's about 56 of us on my foundation year at the moment, and there's definitely over 10 of us. So it's getting better. Yes. I wouldn't say it's still even yet. It's definitely still a male-dominated industry.
I suspect, though, 5-10 years ago, there would have been a lot less females.
When going around for the open days and speaking to the students, they were saying that in their years, they started on the B-Eng and they would be like 200 on their degree, but there'd be about 6 girls. It was a bit crazy.
You know, the demographics just don't support that anymore. I mean, you are part of half the population.
Yeah.
You know, so plus, I mean, you bring different ways of looking at things and different perspectives.
Yeah.
And I think to assume that cars are only something that boys can be interested in is kind of old-fashioned as saying that girls don't play football, isn't it? Or rugby, and they're often better at it than the men these days, actually. So, who do you like in motorsport?
I've always followed kind of everyone. I say at the moment, my person that I follow is like Lewis Hamilton, Oscar Piastri, but also going back, also looking at like Nigel Mansell, Ayrton Senna, and looking at all the amazing racing drivers that they were in their generation and still are. There
are some fantastic female drivers out there, but we've not actually seen, a true breakthrough of female drivers coming into Formula One or even the sort of high-level sports cars, the Le Mans series and so on. Why do you think that is?
I think the whole funding behind it is very lacking because in most people's minds, everyone's eyes are still, it's a male-dominated industry. So there's mostly male racing drivers. So a lot of sponsors will go towards the male racing drivers because that's the norm, I suppose, for motorsport. There has been a few female drivers that have tried and got so far, but they then can't deal with the stresses sometimes.
It's very physical, isn't it?
It is very physical. I did my EPQ on why there's not many female racing drivers, and quite a lot of it is actually to do with we have different strengths. So our muscles don't develop as much as men, which I think is part of the factor, but it's also a lot of it actually to do with the funding and the sponsorship and the support that way.
Well, Formula One, of course, is notoriously difficult to get into unless you've got somebody backing you who's got humongous amounts of money, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Which is why somebody like Lance Stroll is... his dad buys a racing team in order for him to have a seat. No disrespect to Lance Stroll, but it's kind of the way it is, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
That's why Lewis Hamilton was so unusual, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think we don't also see a lot of racing drivers that haven't been through a driver academy anymore. A lot of the big teams will have a driver academy and they'll go to the younger formulas, so like Formula 4 and all karting. Yeah. They'll look and go, they've got talent, we'll develop them. And then those quite often are the drivers that will get into Formula 1.
Yeah. And I think since the days of sort of Jenson Button and Lewis Hamilton, we've seen some of that talent coming through, at a very young age, haven't we?
Definitely.
Not much older than yourself.
We have Kimi Antonelli this year in F1, and he is only literally just 18, so he's very young.
Yeah, incredible, actually.
Yeah, it is.
Incredible. And where will Formula One go? I mean, you've already got Formula E. I know that 2026, isn't it? Is it next year or the year after that the whole formula changes again? And I think it's likely to go more electric still, isn't it? So it'll still be hybrid, but it'll be more electric than it is today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those sort of things maybe will change it. It's the G-forces, though, isn't it? I mean, when you look at how these guys train and you look at them sort of like pulling enormous weights with their necks and things, I don't know whether a woman's physiology would be ideal for that. Look, I mean, I'm saying that. I early last year, I saw a woman fighter pilot who was talking, and she was saying that it was strongly believed that flying at max speeds in a fighter jet would do irreparable damage to a woman's anatomy. Well, that's clearly nonsense because she is a full-blown fighter pilot who's had active duty and everything in the Iraq wars and things like that. So, if you can be a fighter pilot, why couldn't you be a Formula One driver,
I think in some sense it's just we have to train that little bit harder to get there. Same with actually trying to get into the industry. We've just got to work that little bit harder to get there, I suppose.
You can make your exceptional status as like one of the few work for you.
Yeah.
For me, I still think the industry needs to do an awful lot more to reach out. I mean, actually, wherever there's an engineering department and there are people that have a natural interest in mechanical engineering, we should be all over those places, really. You should actually have people coming to you rather than you thinking, how the hell do I break this door down? Because, as I say, the industry needs that talent. Today, I mean, the chief executive of General Motors is a woman.
Yeah.
Mary Barra, she's quite unusual. You've got, just retired actually, but Linda Jackson, who has been the head of Peugeot. Yeah. That's what we want to see more of. And that's when the path for people like yourself becomes clearer, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because you've got those direct role models and they aren't few and far between.
Yeah.
However your career progresses, I think it will be totally different to today. Whereas if you get a room full of senior automotive executives today, it's predominantly people around my age who are mainly men. But, with the younger generation coming through, that's definitely changing.
Yeah.
You had some work experience with Lotus, didn't you?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to get a week work experience at Lotus. Yeah.
What was that like?
It was really interesting. We learned about all their systems they have in place, but also we got to work on their training facilities they have for their staff. So building all the car parts that they had there, it was quite fun.
I guess for anybody who's not local here, Lotus have their head office at Hethel, don't
Yes,
they? Just
do.
outside Norwich. They have a big facility in Norwich near the airport, don't they?
Yeah,
which is where you were,
that's where
I
they
believe.
build all their chassis and then they transport them to Hethel there as well. We managed to have a look around when they were building it because the week we went, unfortunately, all the staff were off for a week because they have to have break weeks. So
I know from our earlier conversations, you learned quite a bit about Lotus and what their direction is.
yeah, definitely.
Well, they're going down the 100% electric route, I believe.
Yeah, they are. The last kart they built is basically their last petrol kart. The rest of them are going to be electric. So it's a big move.
How do you think your generation see the change from sort of internal combustion engines to electric mobility?
I think it's a positive change, I suppose. It's just a bit of a step. You've gone from petrol engines or combustion engines to all of a sudden everything's nearly got to be electric. You're kind of losing the step in between, I suppose. Yeah, we've had a few hybrid vehicles, but all of a sudden everything's got to be electric.
I think we all understand the environmental challenges, don't we? And even more so, the younger you are, the more important it is in a way because you've got to live on this planet longer, haven't you? But at the same time, I mean, the UK has got some of the strictest policies around trying to reach kind of net zero.
Yeah.
That's a massive challenge for the industry. There's some fabulous product coming. There's some amazing stuff coming out of China, of course.
Yeah.
Who have a lot of advantages around electric, of course, because they own most of the raw materials.
Yeah, they do.
But they also, a number of the companies making those cars are tech companies rather than car companies.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, as somebody of today's generation, Generation Z, you've talked about people spending a lot of time on their devices and so on. And, cars that have been built by the same people who make all those devices, is that something that's going to sort of add an appeal, do you think?
Maybe a different way into the industry. But I think we might lose the traditional motor industry itself. But in some ways, it's combining the tech and the motor industry to make that forward move into the more advanced cars, I suppose.
Yeah, it's interesting, actually, that some of the car manufacturers have chosen to exhibit at tech shows rather than car shows.
Yeah.
Motor shows have been dying over the years because it's very forward-looking, isn't it, engineering? I mean, you're always kind of pushing the boundaries, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Is that part of what excites you about it?
Yeah, having the opportunity to make that extra push over the edge or something like that and make something that could be the next big thing, just that alone is very exciting.
You have a particular interest in motorsport.
Yeah.
What would help you in that regard? I mean, in terms of pursuing your sort of career aims, how difficult is it for you to find the routes into where you might want to work ultimately?
For motorsport, it is very hard to even find some work experience. You have to have the connections in the industry. If you don't have those connections, then you have no chance. You can be the best of the best, but if you've got no one working in that company that you want to possibly go get work experience for, it's not going to work. I've tried to apply for multiple places and I've got turned down just because I don't have the connections.
How did you get into Lotus?
Well, actually, one of my friend's parents works quite high up in their company, so I was quite lucky that way. They got me the email to start off, but the rest of it was off my own back, and I did that.
Well done. And do you still have connections at Lotus that you could maybe exploit in the future?
Well, maybe. I have connections with connections, I suppose. Having connections with some people and then they know someone else in this company, it always gets your name spread around, I suppose, in some ways.
I think the interesting thing is that people watching this podcast, will be crying out for talent. You know, and I think it's important for people to hear that from the outside of the industry, it's not so clear how you can get into it.
No, it's not.
Without, as you say, it's an interesting thing because the organisation that I formerly ran, the Institute of the Motor Industry, we had data that showed that an extraordinary number of people who do come into the industry come into it because they have a family member or a friend or a neighbour or somebody, but somebody who can actually point them in the right direction and maybe open a couple of doors for them. And whilst that's great, it shouldn't be the only way that you can get in, should it?
No, it shouldn't be, no. I was going to say, applying for work experience after work experience and getting rejected so many times, you keep going, but it also feels like there's no chance of getting that way. But you keep going because that's something you want to do.
Yes.
So you have to kind of keep going, and it's hard. But I'd also say the thing is with wanting to do engineering, there's also, you have to have a certain number of skills to go and even get work experience with them.
Yes.
So at the point I was first applying, I'd only just done my GCSEs. They're like, you don't have the skills yet. So they kind of were like, oh, maybe in a few years. But I think it should be more open, especially for engineering. I feel like it's slightly easier for different career paths if you want to get into the motor industry. But engineering's very particular because you have to know certain things to go and do it, I suppose.
Yes, there is obviously a manufacturing base here. There is a motor industry in Britain rather than a British motor industry, really. It's mostly foreign owned these days.
Yeah.
Because Formula One's a good example, isn't it? That a huge amount of Formula One expertise resides in the UK, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Nearly all the teams reside in the UK. There was only Ferrari that's still in Italy, and I think maybe one other that's not in
I think
Britain.
what was Sauber maybe is not UK, but not fully, although they'll have some engineering here because this is where the expertise lies. So it belies the fact that we don't have the expertise in the UK because nothing's more sophisticated than Formula One, is it? Have you ever been to the Festival of Speed or anything like that?
I did once, and it was the best experience I've ever had. When we went, they literally had just bought a Ferrari out, so everyone kind of followed the Ferrari. We were the only people left at McLaren, and they were like, oh, do you want to come in? So we went in and we got to look at Ayrton Senna's car and Lewis Hamilton's 2008 McLaren. We said that, I'm interested in motorsport, and they talked to me about what they were doing to the engine of Lewis Hamilton's car because they were running a system on it at that point. So we timed it right to let me get in. But I suppose if I hadn't timed it right, I might not have been allowed in or something like that.
It was meant to happen.
It was meant to happen.
It was meant to happen, I'm sure. And they'll remember you when you're looking for work. I'm sure McLaren will come knocking on your door. From your perspective, what could the industry do more to support the likes of yourself? Because it sounds like you have to sort of complete your education, and then go looking for opportunities in the industry. But surely the industry could do more to reach out.
I would say possibly even getting connected with schools or even universities, just giving us the opportunity to even just go look or get a better understanding of what that industry is actually like. Because I love motorsport, but I don't really know exactly what goes on behind the scenes in some cases. So I don't see how they build the things and things like that. So just to get even an insight into that would just be a great experience alone.
And more broadly, visiting manufacturing facilities, because there are plenty in the UK, seeing how cars are actually built, because it's a fascinating process. Yeah. If you could wave a magic wand, what would your the arc of your future career look like?
That's a bit of a tricky question. I suppose getting into that motor industry and then going up through the ranks and seeing how far I could get.
It's interesting because when one of my former board members in my last organisation is actually an engineer at Jaguar Land Rover, and he worked for Nissan before, and he alone in his particular area of engineering employs sort of 6,000 software engineers. There are a huge number of jobs, actually, if you know the right connections. Yeah. I just worry that our industry doesn't reach out enough, despite all the best efforts of organisations like my former organisation. Yeah. And I definitely think that the industry could do more to support people like yourself through education, because actually they'll want you. When you're qualified, they'll desperately want you. Yeah. We really want people like you and your fellow students. Quite why we wait until you've qualified and then wonder where you've gone, because somebody else might have snapped you up, which I'm sure they will. I'm glad to see this extracurricular stuff coming back, because most people leave school without knowing what the hell they want to do, don't they? Yeah. You might have entered engineering and gone, actually, no, I've tried it. It's not for me. And that often happens, doesn't it? Pleased to know that it hasn't, in this case. It's actually kind of raised your interest rather than the opposite. In some ways, Megan, you would have traditionally been seen as something of a unicorn, a young woman who's sort of really interested in engineering. I'm glad to hear that's less the case now.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm really encouraged that you're enjoying it as much as you expected to.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that'll be even more so when you get to specialise next year.
Yeah, definitely. I can't wait.
I really wish you well with that. And, I'll always be around to help you find the right avenues into our industry. But there's plenty of people who will watch this who will say, now that's somebody who I could offer an opportunity to going forward. So I really wish you well with that. And I thank you for being part of this today.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
So, Megan, I'm gonna ask everybody who comes on this series, what would be your favourite driving song?
I think always going on holiday, we have this one song that plays, and it's quite typical. Half the time we have Life is a Highway from Cars play, because we're going down the toll roads in France, and it's quite fast. But I suppose that would be one of my driving songs.
I'll have to listen to that one that you just mentioned, actually. I've never thought it's not come up on my list before. Do you have a favourite car? If, money's no object and you could acquire any car you like, what would it be?
I've always been a McLaren person. I think I have to be a McLaren 720. That's one of my favourites.
You've got to aim high, haven't you? You know.
Yeah.
So I think that's really interesting talking to Megan. And I think, look, what have we learned from it, really? I mean, I think we've learned that certainly the interest in our industry is there. Generation Z are just as engaged or capably and just as engaged as any generation that's gone before. But we've also learned that, honestly, I still think, despite all of the good things that we do as an industry, we still simply collectively don't do enough to engage with the younger generation. You know, rather than having opinions that are not based on any facts, we should ask people, talk to people like Megan, find out what it is that would help them to see our industry as a positive destination. And I think there's much that we can take away and that we can implement. But for me personally, I'm encouraged to know that there are people like Megan who do want to join our industry. And I'll certainly do whatever I can to help her make sure that she lands up where she wants to be. There you go.